You're gonna meet a girl in your 20s who's beautiful, who's kind, who's thoughtful, and you're gonna tell her that you're not ready for a relationship. She was bringing guys back. You know, these emos just kept on coming. Let's just do on top of the close. Just these little things where you feel seen and you feel held and you feel loved. Foreplay. So we have foreplay. Chef's kiss, because actually a couple days later, you know, he wasn't in the most communicative with me, and then it really made me think, well, I didn't regret our intimacy then, but I kind of do now. Like, you kind of make me feel like a bit of a fool, right? Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to the Unapologetically Yourself podcast, a podcast where we can literally be our authentic selves, goofy, silly, sometimes ugly, and, you know, just kind, always kind. Okay, so today's episode is filmed in a beautiful new studio. I'm so excited to see you guys. If you are interested in watching my day in the life, go to my YouTube channel, link in the bio, and you'll be able to see exactly how I spend my day as a digital nomad here in Bali. Today's episode is going to be about sexual boundaries. The reason that I'm making this episode is because the older that I get, the more I realize no one talks about it. No one talks about sexual boundaries. I feel like they talk about women having headaches when they want to have sex. You know, how many people have you slept with? What is your body count? And I don't know. I just want to take away the stigma away from sex, and I want it to be an open conversation because I've definitely made mistakes in my life that I wish I could have avoided, but here we are, and we're obviously stronger and better because of it. That being said, I know when I have children, I'm definitely going to introduce sex to them in a different way, just so that they can avoid some of the confusion that I think that I've had living 28 years on this earth. I think it will be fun to actually talk about what age we lost our virginity. Like, I am going to be very honest in this episode. So if you're from my hometown, hello. And if you're not, then even better. But essentially, I grew up with a Caribbean mom. My mom was super strict about sex. I'm one of 3 sisters, and I'm the middle child. So typically the most unloved, but the most unruly, which probably goes together now that I think about it. Obviously that is a joke, but do let me know. Do you think the middle children have less love? Like, do you think there's any truth to that dynamic? So my mum was very strict about having sex, and I think that's definitely due to her upbringing. She grew up in the Caribbean where women were having kids very young. And I think that she wanted to save us from that, and also from, well, I suppose abuse, to be quite honest. She was very strict. We weren't allowed to go to people's houses for sleepovers and things like that. At the time, you know, I was pissed off. I'm like, Mum, let me have some friends. I'm already a loser. I'm already being bullied. Let me go to a sleepover. But, you know, the typical mum line, which is, you know, you'll thank me when you're older. You'll understand when you're older. And I get it. I understand. So as the middle child, my older sister was the one always having dates. Well, I shouldn't say always having dates. Sorry, Natalie. She was dating, right? She was a goth. So she dated this one guy who had one glove. Like, he would come to the door only with one glove. She would date guys that had like really long leather jackets and the studded boots. She was definitely a goth. I always kind of say in England, when you're growing up, you're either a chav or you're a goth or an emo. So I was definitely chav leaning. I had the big pearl necklace, the cakey foundation, the straightened hair, the kind of selfie. I literally had a picture like this with the caption forever and always. And she was full goth. She was full emo. But anyway, she was bringing guys back. You know, these emos just kept on coming. So every time my sister got a new boyfriend, we would all have a talk, right? My mom would sit us down and she'd go, basically, you're not allowed to have sex until you're 18, and guys only want one thing. And to be honest, I think that was the extent of our sexual education with my mom. And it was just really repeated every time my sister had a new boyfriend or a new friend that was a guy. My mom was hyper cautious. And I think this rhetoric maybe started when I was like 8 years old, right? So I think from 8, I mean, it wasn't like my sister was dating at 12, but I just feel like this information was really disseminated to me from a really young age. What do we think that actually did for us? I know that for my sister, it made sex something that was really scary and something a bit more taboo. I think that she felt maybe a bit gross or a bit criminal when she did start having sex. And I think that she'll be happy for me to share this, just because it's important that we discuss how upbringings can affect you in everyday life. Of course, I think the previous generation didn't know how to communicate, and I think that is the gem that us as millennials or Gen Z have. We are really pioneering this for our future kids and grandchildren. And I even feel like now I'm teaching my parents how to communicate better with me. Psychologists do say the first 5 years of life are so imperative and pivotal in the development of a child. Obviously, this isn't the first 5 years of my life, but it just goes to show how pivotal it is. You know, what your parents say to you matter. And I think that not enough focus was really put on that in previous years. So yeah, so I grew up thinking, you know, I can't have sex until I'm 18 and that guys only want one thing. And I think that kind of made me feel like subliminally, I don't think this was ever a conscious thought. You're only useful for one thing. I do think that compared to my sisters, I was always the kind of skinnier sister, and so I was always referred to as like sexy, which is really bizarre. This is literally so bizarre. And my sisters would always be like creative or intelligent. And so I think because of that, I really niched myself down into being dependent on aesthetics only. Maybe, if I'm being honest, made me not prioritize less my intelligence, but maybe not think about it so much. So how does this tie all into sexual boundaries? Because now we're kind of going on a little rabbit hole, but I mean, this is what a podcast is for, yapping, which I can do. So I basically did start having sex, let's say at 18. I'll do a little wink there because there is an asterisk, but that's for the Patreon. That level of detail is not for free. And I just think that I really enjoyed it. It was something super, super fun. Yeah, like little Duracell bunny, couldn't stop. But I don't know. I do think there's a period of my life where I was super experimental with sex and I wasn't prioritizing myself, my body, or my mind. There have been situations, for example, where I never intended to do something sexually with someone, and I'm not sure if I particularly voiced that, but I never suggested it either. And so the situation came to be exactly that. It kind of came to be sexual. And I think when you're growing up and you have all these hormones, and a kind of a lack of conversation around consent, you know, consent wasn't something that was spoken about as much as it is now. And so I kind of was just like, okay, well, we're here and that's the way it's going. And so it did, right? Which is kind of ridiculous to say, but the reason I'm saying it is because of how ridiculous it is, like to be so unconscious, because I wasn't taught how to consciously have sex. And that's what this episode is about: sexual boundaries, being sexually conscious and aware. So yeah, I mean, my earliest memory of having kind of warped boundaries was when I was maybe around 18. I remember I couldn't get home after the club. Basically, I stole my sister's ID. I stole my sister's Tobago passport because I was 17. I must have been 17. And I went to the club and I told my mom I was at a sleepover with friends. So she rings me at the club. The music is like so loud. I'm like, oh, mom, we're just listening to music. She's like, is everything okay? Yeah, okay, cool, goodbye, right? So I'm like, okay. So I'm at the club. She thinks I'm at a sleepover. It just so happens, actually, on this night out, my friend's ex is there. And you know how the old story goes with the ex and the lovers, you know, they actually leave together, right? So the girl I was meant to stay home with disappears with her ex, leaves me at the club, and I can't go home because I've told my mom I'm at the club. Anyway, so I end up going home with this guy. He's a friend from school, and we just like, I don't know, I think like I said something like, he said like, I'll sleep on the sofa or something. And I said, it's okay, you don't need to sleep on the sofa, like we can just lay together in bed, it's not an issue. But for me, I was very innocent, and so I didn't really think too much past that comment, to be honest. And for him too, I don't necessarily blame him. We were very young, hormones were raging, and there was no real lesson around consent. So I want to make this a lesson right now for those who are watching of any age. Consent to me, and should be to everyone, right, is when two parties explicitly, consciously, intentionally say yes. And it might sound kind of unsexy, but there's nothing more unsexy than rape. So let's just be honest, okay? What I would say is that there needs to be a hell yes. So if you're a guy, and it can be very confusing for a guy because again, they have raging hormones, they're trying to do whatever. But if a girl is not saying yes, if she's not enthusiastic, it's a no. There's no convincing. There's no like trying to turn her on. Like it's just a no, and you need to just take the L and move on. And I think that I have been in situations where guys just can't take the L. Like they can't control themselves. They can't control their lust. And it's super, super unattractive. And then on my side, I couldn't control my voice. I couldn't control my boundaries. I wasn't able to actually communicate like, hey, hold on. I know I didn't say no, but at no point did I say yes, right? So that's why I'm making this episode, so you know on both sides, you have to be conscious and you have to be intentional with the situations you're getting yourself into, and maybe having a bit of foresight of like, okay, what could happen after I say yes? We can just lay in bed together, you know? In my mind, I just thought, okay, we will go to sleep. At this point, I did have the consciousness to say, you know, I was actually a virgin. So I said, I don't want to have sex with you, and he was okay with that. But let's just say other things happened, and not to make this like a sort of dire situation, but I did have an undertone of like, I actually didn't really want this to happen. So even though it was an enjoyable experience, let's say, it was by no means intentional, right? I didn't intend for that to happen. It wasn't on my mind, and it was a situation that I was very passive in. And I just think moving forward, we need to be very intentional and aware of what's going on. So to summarize, consent is actively hell yes. And it comes with dating too. Like if you're speaking to someone and they're a bit more passive, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. Like if a guy isn't committing, it's because you are not the one and you need to to move on. Like there's no kind of trying to change him, trying to show up differently. Guys pretty much know very quickly if they want to be with you and if they don't. But and also it might not even be to do with you, right? I saw this meme on Instagram, which was it kind of said, you're going to meet a girl in your 20s who's beautiful, who's kind, who's thoughtful, and you're going to tell her that you're not ready for a relationship. And it just made me laugh. And I also like whispered into my phone to try and see if like, you know, the FBI man could send it to my ex. Obviously we're not following each other on Instagram, but I just think that if the FBI man is going to listen to everything that I do, he should help a girl out and he should send that reel to my ex, because I just think it's so funny. Like I was like the perfect person, but if a guy like doesn't have his shit together, he is a bit confused in life, he can't give you what you want, and so he just like, you know, taps out, which is absolutely fine. Respect yourself and where you are in life. If it's not a hell yes, it's a no. Guys, learn that. Girls, you have a voice, please use it. I've been in situations actually where I have, you know, made a move on a guy and they've said to me no. Humbling, truly humbling. And I'm gonna say like not very often, but it has happened where the guy says actually no. Like I think in one situation, you know, he was going through a recent breakup or whatever, and of course I respected that. You know, I didn't just go ahead and molest him. So I just want to say it works on both sides to use your voice and express exactly what you want sexually. This episode is so interesting, guys, because I'm like a bit cringing at myself. It's very revealing, but I think it will be interesting for those listening. So we're just gonna carry on. Yeah, so I think, okay, there's different layers to it as well. So not only is there consensual sex, which is the bare minimum, okay? So we've gone over the bare minimum. I'm not gonna come back to the idea of consent. We should know it by now. But I am gonna talk about the different layers. I'm 28 and I learned this lesson last week, okay? So forgive me. This is why I'm making this podcast, so that you don't have to wait till you're 28 to actually learn this. I had this situation recently where I was hanging out with a guy and we were on a date. So we went out drinking. Obviously I'm not gonna get into the details. I'm like, he touched my hair here. No, but what I will say is obviously there's layers, right? There's layers to sexual activities. So the first layer should definitely be foreplay. And this literally can be conversation. It can be taking someone to dinner. So this is what people don't realize. Foreplay starts the minute that you meet someone, you know? Are they standing on the right side of the pathway? I know that's kind of a bit of a dying breed, chivalry, but I'm a sucker for chivalry. Like if you move to stand on the edge of the sidewalk, the pavement, bonus points. If you don't know why, if you're a guy listening to this, or if you're a girl and you don't understand, essentially in the olden days, men would stand on the edge of the pavement, on the sidewalk, to be closer to the road, so that if anything happens, they kind of protect you and you're inside, you're away from the road. And it's the same with women and kids. They need to be on the inside of the sidewalk and the man should be on the outside. So when I see a guy consciously move to the other side to be on the outside, I'm like, oh, I'm swooning. I'm like, this guy is a gentleman. That to me, foreplay, okay? That's foreplay to me. What other things would be considered foreplay? Noticing things about you, saying, I got you this coffee because it reminded me of you, or just little thoughtful things is foreplay. Having undivided attention when someone turns away their phone while you're at dinner together, foreplay. Just these little things where you feel seen and you feel held and you feel loved, foreplay. So we have foreplay. Chef's kiss. I'm going to circle back to controlling your lust because this is something I learned recently. So in my previous episode, you'll know that I did date an Australian guy in Da Nang in Vietnam, and he is very stoic, okay? He really taught me how to control your lust. I have previously gotten myself in a bit of trouble for being very lustful, and I think it was my disconnection from sexually, you know? So that's why I'm making this episode to be more connected and conscious and to inform. But previously I was definitely more not intentional. I definitely had, and I don't think necessarily there's anything wrong with this, right? But I definitely had an unconscious phase of having hookups, having fun, but kind of letting people into my energy that didn't deserve to be there, that didn't perhaps earn my respect or earn my energy. And it was just data points, right? I was just collecting data to know what I liked, what I didn't like, and what I wouldn't do again. But in retrospect, in hindsight, I can definitely see I was kind of acting cliche as it is. Like maybe, do I say this? Do I label myself with this? But fuck it, let's do it. We're being unapologetically ourselves. I definitely feel like I had a little bit of like a daddy wound from just having a lack of a consistent father figure. I think that I didn't have a good example of how someone should treat you unconditionally without the attachment of sex. Whenever I had guys or men in my sphere, they were always attracted to me. So hanging out with a lot of men, there was always an expectation. And so I think that kind of really shaped the way that I dated. It shaped the way I had these hookups because I was kind of craving male energy, but I did not have boundaries and it always came with expectation, right? So I didn't know better to say, no, I want a friend here, or no, I'd rather we didn't do this. I was completely against the things that perhaps I did, but I probably didn't know that there were other options. Like I probably didn't know like, okay, we could just go to the cinema and I could go home, or we could actually sleep in the same bed, or I didn't think of any other endings. I didn't question when there was a sexual ending really. Like if I liked the guy, and it's not to say that any of these guys did anything untoward, different story, different time, but yeah, it's just like I didn't question when it came to a sexual ending because that's always what I had known, and I liked the guy and it just seemed like a very natural progression. But actually no, you can really be friendly with guys without these things happening. I definitely had periods of time where I didn't control my lust because I grew to learn to enjoy sex, because that was basically all the endings that I had with guys. It always led to something sexually 9 times out of 10. And so that became very normal for me. I enjoyed sex, I had sex, I love sex, chef's kiss, right? Now that I'm older, I don't need all of that. I've literally done it in the past. And so I'm looking for connection. That's what turns me on. Actually, my foreplay is connection. I met the Australian guy. I'm not gonna tell you his name, but he's named after a vegetable. And I think it's like a common Australian name, so you could probably guess it. So he really taught me about controlling lust, and it was such a great experience because it's actually the first time in my modern day life that I've met a guy so eloquent about controlling lust. And we actually had these conversations. So we were dating, we met on Hinge. Yeah, I think that I kind of friend zoned him very early on. I realized that he probably wasn't the one, but we did decide to carry on hanging out afterwards because we really enjoyed each other's energy. Like I kind of said to him, is this like brother and sister? But again, that's perverted. So I said, maybe we're just intimate friends because yeah, we really hung out, like to get to know each other. Very friendly. We're like very friendly, like friends with benefits, I suppose, almost, but not kind of relation, not endgame. We were basically not each other's endgame. And we were kind of mature enough to be honest with each other, but also mature enough to be like, but we're great as friends, so let's carry on hanging out. Yeah, it was the first time in my adult life really that I was kind of with a guy. And this was an honest conversation, like me and him, like hanging out in his bed, listening to music. We're like, should we have sex? And then you're like, okay, well, I think it would be fun, but you know, it's gonna change the dynamic a little. For me personally, I'm super emotional. So I was like, I'm gonna be super attached if we have sex, you know? And we just kind of like had this back and forth. And then we said, okay, like, so maybe we shouldn't have sex then. Okay, cool. And so we went on like 8 dates, 9 dates. We never had sex. He paid for everything every time. And yeah, I was like, what an amazing experience, because he really taught me to level up my dating standards. I'd been dating boys really who didn't really know how to be men. So it was really nice to date a man who was super respectful. Now, it's not to say that we weren't intimate. Of course, we were intimate friends, but we kind of just had this hard boundary where we're like, we're just not going to sleep together because we don't need to. And that was super enlightening for me and super attractive. If anything, it made me want to sleep with him more because he was so respectful. Like, God damn, I'm gonna fuck the respect out of you. So yes, that was a really great experience. And this is what I'm bringing to this lesson as well, for men and for women. Learn to control your lust. Of course, if you want to have a period or your whole life where you are promiscuous, do as you please, but make sure it's safe, you know, that you're taking precautions, make sure it's consensual, because I do think at the end of the day, it takes a toll. Like, obviously we have people like Bonnie Blue and Lily Phillips, and they're really good examples because Lily Phillips, you see her crying in a documentary, that was taking an emotional toll on her. Even though she was doing all these things for money, you could tell that actually that tore away at her soul. I never watched the documentary. Seeing that clip was enough. In contrast, obviously you have Bonnie Blue, who I listened to the Chris Williamson podcast. The podcast is called Modern Wisdom. I think he's so cute. My sister said to me, like, maybe you should, you know, get with him. I'm like, how do you think I'm gonna just call Taylor? Just call Chris. But Chris, if you're watching. But I did listen to the Chris Williamson podcast where he interviews Bonnie Blue and I think she's a therapist. She must be a sexual therapist, but she is a therapist. It's a table with the three of them discussing exactly what she does, why she does it. And it's very clear from this interview that she loves sex, that she doesn't feel like how Lily Phillips feels. And so whilst perhaps I don't understand the desire to sleep with 1,000 men in one day, it seems pretty conscious to me what she's doing. And so I think that's a difference. Are you consciously or unconsciously sleeping around? Of course, you have free will, do whatever you want. So, you know, after I dated that Australian guy, I actually dated another Australian guy, just thought I'd try out the species. And, you know, he was super lustful. So I had to like actually say no. Like I said to him, I'm celibate. I became celibate after dating guys who just wanted this end game. I want to be like end game, okay? This is the difference. This is the end game I'm after. And so I decided to be celibate until I'm in a relationship. And so I actually told that to this Australian guy, and you know, he accepted it. But it was really interesting to see the contrast of like a guy that could control himself and another guy that was super lustful. And so I think moving forward into 2026, let's control our lust, let's bring back our power, let's have really fucking amazing amazing connections. The best sex is with someone that you know, you respect, that you love. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is another layer to sexual boundaries that I learned this week that I didn't really think about before. And it's only when you reflect, I literally had to meditate on what happened and think, what could I have done better and what would I do different moving forward? And honestly, I wish that I would meditate after every date, because going on dates and not thinking about constructively how to improve them is really unconscious, because then you just go into the next date doing exactly the same things or not even thinking about it. So yeah, really should have been like meditating and reflecting this whole time. But I recently went on a date with this guy and we went out for dinner, we went out for drinks. Actually, we didn't go out for dinner, but we went out for drinks. And I did mention, of course, that I was celibate, which was fine. Now, we did decide to be a little bit intimate, but in hindsight and in my meditation, I thought, honey, like you can vocalize a different layer of intimacy. So the thing is, and this is what I said to him when, you know, before when he was basically trying to sleep with me, like, to be crass, when he was trying to sleep with me, I said to him, you know, you need to learn to control your lust. So I'm literally saying this to the lustful men now. To the thirsty guys, I'm literally telling them to their face, you need to control your lust. I'm like, my husband would never. I also even told him about a meme that I saw on Instagram, which was a girl saying, he let me hit it on the first date, my husband would never. And he didn't understand it, and I had to say it again, it's from a girl's perspective. She said, you know, he let me hit it on the first date, my husband would never. And I'm like, exactly the same. And this is basically, I said, if we slept together, this would be a one-night stand and we wouldn't like carry on, because my husband would never do that. My husband would know to control his lust. But really, once you start having sex, that's literally all that you do. It's very few times that you might do the things before again, you know? That's what I said to him. If we don't have sex, then think about how much better our conversations will be. Because I'm at this point in my life now, of course, where I'm dating to marry. And so I'm not trying to be lustful with every man that looks at me. Okay, so then we obviously didn't have sex. Then we did become a bit intimate. And this is where I lost my voice, because I thought, but also there's stages to intimacy. So right, either you have sex or you don't have sex, but wait, there's more. Perhaps like you could do something above your clothes, okay? And then the next time you can go underneath, you know? I know this sounds a bit crazy to even say out loud, but had I thought about this before, in this moment when we were being intimate, I could have literally said, because I was happy to be intimate, I wasn't against it. I thought, girl, it's been some time. I feel like good recalibration, you know? My body needed to be recalibrated and I was open to it. But perhaps I would have liked to take things a little slower. And I did say to him, I would have liked if perhaps we waited some more time before we were intimate. And he said, well, I don't have any regrets. And I said, well, me neither, right? Because everything is a lesson. But upon my mindset, upon my reflection, when I was meditating, I was thinking, I should have said to him, like maybe this time we could just be on top of the clothes, right? Because actually there's something really sexy about delaying sex, about delaying, you know, orgasm, just having these little boundaries. Because actually a couple days later, you know, he wasn't in the most communicative with me. And then it really made me think, well, I didn't regret our intimacy then, but I kind of do now. Like you kind of make me feel like a bit of a fool, right? And I was thinking, well, what could I have done to make that a bit better, to make me feel a bit better with myself? And I think it would have been, because when we were together, I wasn't even thinking, this is the thing, I'm so naive. I wasn't even thinking about being intimate, right? It hadn't even crossed my mind that that's what his intentions were. But again, lustful guy. So you have to really be aware with who you're dating, because sometimes you're in these situations where you're like, how did I get here? I didn't consciously choose this. And so yeah, at 28, I found myself in the same situation as I did when I was 17, which is insane. And it's not to say that I regretted it. I also enjoyed it, but I wish things were taken slower. And in hindsight, I would have communicated that by saying, okay, I'm celibate, I'm open to doing things, but let's just like keep it above the clothes today, okay? Like let's just do some light touching, you know? That would still kind of scratch the itch. You're still having fun, you're still getting to know each other, it's playful, but it's not so like all or nothing. I mean, why does it have to happen so fast? I think that we've become very accustomed in the modern dating to swipe, to swipe, to swipe, to have multiple options, but actually we can take our time, you know? Like we have time, we can relax, we can chill. And so that's what I literally, this is why I made today's episode, to literally be like, let's just touch each other on top of the clothes. Yeah, I know, it's crazy. It's crazy, but it would have worked. And I would have felt afterwards, in our moment of when we weren't communicating so much, I would have felt safer knowing, well, at least we weren't that intimate, right? At least we weren't so intimate. I wish I would have peeled it back a little further and added like, let's just do on top of the clothes, which is something that no one says. No one says this, but it would have made me feel better. And I literally made this podcast just to let girls know out there who are thinking about having sex, who are actively having sex, who are not sure. Sometimes you meet a guy and you actually just want to like actually have sex with them. Like they're literally no boundaries. They're so hot, they're so kind, you're down, and that is amazing. And sometimes you meet people and you think, oh, I kind of want to get to know your brain a little bit more. Like we don't fit so easily like I do with someone else, and that's totally okay. Just to know that you have all these options available to you, and don't forget to think about the different situations that could take place. Don't forget to think about the different things that you could say in the moment, because I've had moments where like I couldn't get the words out. You know, I didn't say what I really felt. And so that's what today's episode literally is about. standing up, voicing your sexual boundaries, because sexual boundaries are sexy. When the Australian guy told to me, like, you know, we're not having sex, I'm controlling my lust, that was so sexy. If someone genuinely is turned off by your boundaries, run, because they weren't even looking to respect them anyway, right? Anyone that is intimidated, doesn't want to hear it, run, because they will put you in compromising situations and it won't turn out good. What's so funny is I actually put into ChatGPT like about this topic and to see what prompts it said. So it actually says, I'm not ready for that yet. That to me, I think is fine, but I think you have to be much more clear. So literally say what you want, because if you say, oh, I'm not sure, guys will just like, these fucking guys. Obviously gentlemen won't do that, but sometimes you don't find out that they're not a gentleman until you're in that situation and you think, oh, okay. But it's so funny. ChatGPT says, I like you, but my pants stay on today. Okay, let's not say, the other one, it says, no thanks, my vibrator and I have a standing appointment. Craziness. Girls, guys, respect your boundaries, respect your mind, body, and soul. If you don't want to go all the way, let it be known. Respect yourself by vocalizing exactly what you want. And I think that you will have much more intentional, conscious, amazing sex because of it. Ultimately, the right guy will want to please you, want to do the things that make you feel good, and will never want to hurt you. I hope you guys have enjoyed my stories. I mean, your girl's been busy, okay? Maybe on my YouTube video, I basically had a welcome back to YouTube because I haven't posted in maybe 2 years. And so I said things that have changed, you know, since I've joined YouTube. I obviously didn't go into that level of detail there. That's what the podcast is for, the girly yaps. But yeah, your girl's been busy. I've been traveling the world for 6 years, basically solo. So of course, I'm probably dating more than someone that is, that's not true. You could be in your hometown and still date a lot. What I mean by that is I'm dating lots of different guys. Like I've literally dated guys from many nationalities. So maybe it's a bit different than when you're dating someone in your hometown, in your home country. Maybe they're kind of similar, you know, similar types of people. But I've dated Dutch guys, Australian guys. Okay, let's not list them. I've dated a lot of guys. And I did actually notice with the Dutch guy, cultural difference, which I would have never expected to have. So that's what I mean. You might be in situations with different people. Be safe, girls. Put yourself in safe situations. Always let your friends know where you're going and what you're doing. And think about consciously. If you're going on a date, meditate and think, what is the best case scenario here? What is something that I would like to avoid? What are some boundaries that I have in my back pocket just in case? What are some cute, like sexy things I can say if I want to turn him on? You know, have fun. It doesn't have to be like you're frigid. It just means that you're respecting yourself and you're not in a situation where you don't know what to say and like you're just passive, because life is still living consciously, so fucking live in. Okay guys, thank you guys so much for watching and listening to this episode. I hope it's been interesting. I hope that you take away a lot from this, honestly. Share it with your friends. Let them know it's cool, it's fun, and it's sexy to talk about sex. Let me know what you want me to talk about next. Don't forget to subscribe, to follow this podcast on all platforms. Check out my YouTube channel and my socials in the description. I love you guys so much. Thank you for your time, and don't forget to be unapologetically yourself. Bye.